Hello and welcome to Books Up Close. I'm Chris Lloyd. Today I talk to the Ashley Clark, old friend, longtime friend, his backstory, maybe we'll get into it, about his book, The World of Black Film. And we're going to talk about an extract from this book that's about Julie Dash's film, Daughters of the Dust. So then we're going to close read that too. So listener, you're in for a slightly different episode this time, but it's going to be good, I promise. Ashley is a writer, broadcaster, and film programmer. He has organised numerous film seasons at international venues, including London's BFI Southbank, New York's Museum of Modern Art, the Brooklyn Academy of Music, and Toronto's TIFF Lightbox. His writing has appeared in The Guardian, Reverse Shot, Sight and Sound, and Film Comment, and he is the author of two books, Facing Blackness, Media and Minstrelsy, and Spike Lee's Bamboozled, which I did review many moons ago in Black Camera. Go find that review, people. And The World of Black Film, A Journey Through Cinematic Blackness in 100 Films. Ashley was born in London, lives in Jersey City, and works in New York City, where he's been the curatorial director of the Criterion Collection since 2020. Ashley, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I don't think we should dance around our backstory because we are connected cinematically.
We are.
From a stint working the kiosk at the Clapham Picture House many years ago. Many years ago. We had so many great conversations behind that desk. And it was always fun. Actually, just this weekend, I had a memory, and I wonder if you recall this too. There was a lady who came in, looked at me, and said, "I would like one ticket, please, for Contagione." And I said, "Come again?" And she said, "One for Contagione." And I said, "Do you mean contagion?"
Oh my God.
And and that was the kind of, she was lovely, of course, but we did meet some fascinating people. So those were happy days, and I love the podcast, and I'm very happy to be on.
No, this is great. This is a lovely opportunity to talk to you. The book is beautiful. Yeah, those Picture House days are absolutely wild. Sometimes I'm like, did that happen? If you've ever worked in a cinema, listener, like, it's just a particularly singular experience, right? You've got this rush of people, then suddenly the movies start and it's dead. And then suddenly there's like a million people again saying, I want to see this movie. And then you tell them it's got subtitles and they're like, I couldn't do that. And
why would I do that? Yeah. It's hours of boredom followed by seconds of terror.
Yeah, utter terror.
Over and over again.
Over and over again. It's really good. And then you just pick up people's popcorn at the end of a movie while people are banging on the doors to watch the next viewing.
Anyway.
Yes, beautiful backstory. And this book is great. And many things I want to do with it, I guess, and think about how we close read both your text about films and then also how we close read films, because those are very interesting overlapping kind of things. I want to ask you first the question I ask everyone, which is, how do you feel about close reading? And you may have answers in relation to text or film. I don't mind, wherever you want to go with this.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was actually the pleasure and respect and dignity of being close read, being edited very well, because it's an increasingly rare thing that happens. Publications don't really have the resources to do that. A lot of the time, editing can essentially be taken to mean it's uploaded in the CMS and someone presses publish.
Right.
And if you're lucky, someone will fix that rogue apostrophe. But there's such an act of care in having your work truly appreciated and having an editor who is truly invested in making your work the best that it can be. Which I think is the gold standard of editing, and as opposed to somebody trying to impose their ideas on you, and understanding that there's a real emotional component to it as well. One of the first pieces that I wrote for a publication called Reverse Shot, which is the house publication of the Museum of Moving Image in Queens. It is now. It was a review of a film called Trance, the Danny Boyle film, which, funnily enough, I watched at the Clapham Picture House and was curiously taking notes.
That one.
I think at that point I'd been used to not being edited especially carefully, and I wrote something and I thought to myself, well, this is great, send. And because of the time difference, I woke up the next morning and it had come back, a line-by-line edit, I think a fisking, they called it, line-by-line edit, and it was bruising. It was a bruising encounter, and it was necessary, and I think it was one line of critique, which was always really stuck with me and informed how I've proceeded as a writer and an editor when I've had the opportunity to do that. And the comment was, I'm not sure that you know exactly what you mean here. And if you don't, what chance does the reader have? The idea that someone's looking out for you as well. Are you sure you want to go out into the world with that? Because your name is on this piece. So it's someone being invested in you and helping you to articulate yourself as clearly and with as much precision as possible, which was the first thing that came to mind with close reading. Then from a film perspective, reading the text and having the opportunity, when you're fortunate enough to have that length and that space ahead of you to write a fully engaged and formally and texturally precise critique of a film, is a lovely thing. I did a book length analysis of Spike Lee's film Bamboozled, which involved watching that film, a film about America's history of blackface minstrelsy and mental illness and racism, a film that nobody should watch the amount of times that I watched it in a row.
Yep.
But it was a revelatory experience because I was, in watching and rewatching and really paying attention to what is in the frame. And the thing, when I'm teaching students, film students, the first thing you would say is nothing is in this frame by accident. There's a strange paradox where you want to let the text wash over you. You want to be enraptured by it and believe that it's just happening. But you've got to separate your brain and realize that this is all intentional as well. And it can be a quite transcendent experience to manage to fuse the two at once. So have your pleasure receptors and the analytical part of your brain working at the same time. And that's, I guess, what I'm striving to do when I'm critiquing. But in Bamboozled, it was, for example, noticing that the reaction shots that Spike Lee chooses to include of the first big kind of blackface minstrelsy performance are not just white people laughing, but it's black people laughing as well. And a lot of outraged critiques of the film seem to operate from the premise that he was just hammering white liberals and that surely we all know this is wrong. But what makes the film so thorny and so problematic is that everyone's involved in this. And that plays into a long history of Amos and Andy and the NAACP and being very upset at Shaft, for example, and complex intra-communal relations with on-screen representation of black people. So to be able to close read the text in a way that you wouldn't do if you were just firing off a 500-word consumer guide review for the weekend is a really beautiful thing. And I get to do the occasional long piece of writing for Criterion. We do those liner notes essays, which are included in the booklets, and they can be anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 words. So the precise circumstances have to make themselves apparent to be able to go into that level of detail. But it just feels like a respectful and reverential thing to really dive in and look into the choices that are being made in terms of form, camera, sound, all of these things that are so intentional, and they're not necessarily unique to the medium of film because, yes, some are present in television as well. But what makes this a film? And those are the formal and technical aspects are inherent to that as well. And I think it's important to pay notice to that as well, and not just the representational aspects of the film, not just what it's saying, what you want it to say, how it's operating in the discourse and the counter discourse, which is obviously a prevailing theme of our moment. I think of a film like One Battle After Another, which, quickly the horse bolted on that one. And instead of textual analysis that could also factor in the social and political aspects of the film, we were subject to a counter discourse that picked out individual elements of the film unmoored from the context of the rest of it, which I personally find frustrating, but I understand why it's the case.
Discourse. Ugh, what a word. Shivers. Well, but you're right. Like, how do we approach the text kind of without all of that noise and baggage and stuff? But like, it almost seems impossible now, right? Like, there are so many films I haven't seen that I'm like, I feel like I've seen them because they've been shaped for me by others. So when you do go and you're like, wait, do I have a different response? Like you feel like you're missing something. It's so hard to just watch a thing on its own terms now.
Completely. And that's so baked into the ecosystem of writing and publishing as well. I mean, something I remember from my journalism days would be writing a piece. I'd, work hard on it for Vice magazine or The Guardian, and it would go out with an inflammatory headline, which didn't really correspond to the contents of the piece. Then you had the comments section, the war on context, where even screen grab technology, back in my day, it was, you couldn't do a screen grab. And then suddenly on a smartphone, you could just screen grab it. And the discourse would be around a decontextualized screen grab of a piece of writing rather than the toothpaste is out of the tube. There's no sort of coming back from that, but it's
Yeah.
how to insist on textual analysis and also factor in these other aspects of it, which are also integral to the text. It's about bringing them together. It's about, I think, synthesizing them in a generative way.
Yeah.
It doesn't try to separate the ideology and the art. They're all the same thing, but it's just how to tease it out in a way that feels, at least in part way, respect to the native form that the art is created in.
Right. And I feel like every episode almost I've done of this show, we kind of talk about like going back to the language, because we've lost the ability to just like, what did the words say? What are they actually communicating? How are they doing it? Rather than the stuff around the words. And I feel like film viewing is the same, right? Like I don't want to do a screed about like media literacy, but like I don't think, like as a culture, as a contemporary society, we're not very good at reading images either, right? Like, it's not even just language, but like images, like how do we understand, as you said, like a shot or a piece of lighting or a framing, right? What do we do with it? How do we read it? How do we unpack it? Or do we just say, I'm more interested in the message or the meaning of the film, right? As though that was easy to take away anyway. Yeah, so I don't know what we do with that other than keep trying to practice it, right? Those people that are good at it, let's keep doing it.
Absolutely, keep trying to practice it and pay it forward as well, like wherever possible. I think a lot of, again, I'm repeating myself, unfortunately, it happens a fair amount, but it's all wrapped up in the technology of it. There's this kind of exploding genre of screen grab criticism, the one perfect shotification of criticism, where someone will post perhaps in the wrong aspect ratio with the wrong color grade, and we'll be like, what a shot.
Yeah.
But how is it actually operating within the context of the film? Sometimes it's a nice thing to look at, but yeah, it's a constant struggle.
Yeah, and don't get me started on color grading. Anyway, that's a whole other episode.
Whole other different podcast.
I am done with grey films. Anyway, when we're talking about kind of the close reading of your writing here, I wanted to ask you quickly about how you feel about kind of film criticism and its relation to style more precisely. Like I don't know, maybe people don't think this, but this is how I imagine. Like you read a review, right? Like a short little review in the newspaper or online, and it's really there to kind of like deliver some kind of information, right? Should I go watch this new movie, right? I was going to do an example, but that's maybe mean. Should I go read this thing? What does Ashley say? Or what does this person that I like trust say about it? And I'm not necessarily reading the review for its own style, its own language, right? I'm going to it to kind of get what stars is it getting at the end.
Right.
But I feel like criticism as a genre, like we don't talk about it enough, right? As a constructed aesthetic form in itself, right? It's about argumentation. It's about choosing interesting words to describe this movie, trying to translate this movie into this other form, right? I wonder how you feel about style and writing in film criticism.
I think that functionality is a big part of this. I've done so much criticism in different forms. Everything you've spoken about, from the 250 word timeout film review where I'd go and watch, I don't know, Ice Cube and Kevin Hart in Ride Along, and I would, find ways to be as mean as possible about that film in 200 words for £50. And you're really trying to get a quick hit, so your language is very much, you're in this you're in a very dense space, and you're really trying to convey in the context of what this timeout is doing. Is this worth your while to spend money on this weekend or not? To the other kind of spectrum, which is writing a 2,500 word piece about race and representation in Taxi Driver for the Reverse Shot Symposium about Martin Scorsese, which is in and of itself, the fact that they're mounting a whole symposium to this filmmaker, it's an act of reverence. So you're not taking that opportunity to knock Martin Scorsese down a peg or two. So you're trying to be careful in your language to show that there is a level of respect for this filmmaker and the brilliance of the work, but also trying to articulate what you find troublesome and problematic about it. And that's where specificity comes back in. Not making broad assertions, but really diving into the text. I've always responded in terms of criticism to a sense of style in the writer, not something that's overly voicey, but I think it's perhaps a function of me growing up and being obsessed by music magazines, growing up in the golden age of, a golden age, because everyone has their own version of what that is, but of NME, Select magazine, Q magazine, Melody Maker, all of these things. And there was a sense of enthusiasm and a sense of people wanting to share their passions. And I think that has always been something that I've responded to when it's come to criticism and prose style. Perhaps again, it's culturally specific, but a sense of associative logic or references or humor that I find funny.
Yeah.
And then I took a really hard left turn because when I started writing for Sight and Sound magazine, I look back on those pieces now, and it's like it's not even me. It's this sort of chin stroking, ultra serious version of myself because I was clearly feeling insecure.
Yeah.
Sight and Sound had a more academic reputation, and I clearly felt a sense of pressure that I didn't want to be who's this bumpkin with the gags. So I kind of leaned the completely the other way and developed this very strange and stilted tonality and choice of language and perhaps overuse of adjectives and adverbs in a way, which is an enemy of specificity. So you can see all the insecurity in that language. And then again, the economic aspect comes into it. How much am I being paid to write this? Because when you're getting paid, a small amount of, I would say this to students, you have to think in economic terms. If you're getting paid £50 to write a film review, that's an hour to get to the cinema, 2 hours to watch the film, 3 hours maybe to write a first draft, an hour back, I forgot to say, from the cinema. You go to Costa Coffee, that's £3 for your coffee. By the time you do the economics of that, so you have to ask yourself, how much are you bringing to the table is another thing. And that can certainly influence how much style you're willing to bring to the table.
Yep.
That aspect of functionality is present. But yeah, and I just think the psychological element of being paid for work versus doing it for fun. The writing that I do for my Substack is just, I found a freedom to that, and it sounds like me. And the minute money comes into the equation and deadlines come into the equation, I wish I could have more control over my own psychology and try and be the fun guy that's writing for free. But weird things change, and it bears on me in all sorts of different ways that are difficult to pass. So yeah, that's a very long and winding answer to your question, but I think all of these things are interconnected.
Yeah.
The economics of writing certainly influences the amount of style you can bring to it.
Yeah.
But my own personal grounding in enjoying criticism was always a sense of responding to a sense of wit and humor and enthusiasm and that willingness to share. And I've always tried to carry that when I've been fortunate enough to write about things that I'm passionate about and that I like, and also in the films that I program. Obviously, I've told this story a lot, but the real road to Damascus moment for me with film programming was at the Clapham Picture House when I put on a screening of Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee. And that was a moment of sharing my love with this film for other people and seeing them respond to it in such an emotional and invested way. And it made me think, oh, maybe there is something to this as a career. I didn't really think of it as a career at that point, but that's what it came to be.
Well, I remember that screening. And I remember you really taught me how to read that film because I was very overwhelmed by that movie and conflicted in so many different ways. And you really forced me to lean into like the ambivalence of what Spike Lee does. Like, he seems very provocative, and then you're like, actually, he's not making any claims in a particular way, right? He's making contradictory claims, simultaneous claims, clashing claims. And there's like an ambivalence about like, that's on you, right? Like, and it really helped me think through that film in complicated ways that I'm still like, oh yeah, don't know what to do with it, but in a good way, right?
It's an ever-shifting piece of work. I mean, there's an explosiveness and a forthrightness to the film, which renders its ambiguity quite paradoxical.
Yes.
And because it touches on so many like a live third rail emotional themes and ideas, it's a profoundly discomforting experience, and it's a great one to teach and a great one to talk about.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's part of Daughters of the Dust too, right? Which also resists reading in certain ways as well as it invites them. I wonder whether you could read out this little section that we've chosen from your kind of overview of the film I should probably backtrack just slightly. Listeners, The World of Black Film is this beautifully illustrated book, and actually walks you through 100 movies. And each movie, it's a kind of like overview, but it's also a kind of analysis. It's also a kind of, you should probably watch it, people. And each piece is very different in tone, and kind of, some of them are kind of like, let me fill you in on this history that you definitely don't know about. You've never heard of this movie. And then others are kind of like, I don't need to sell you on this. Here's a piece of knowledge you wouldn't have known about its construction. But in this one, you kind of give us the backstory, but then also try and, I think anyway, evoke some of the aesthetic of the movie in your sentences.
Like numerous films in this book, from Munamoto to Sleep with Anger, Daughters of the Dust reflects on the struggle between tradition and modernity. Here, this dynamic is embodied by the family matriarch, Nana Pesant, Cora Lee Day, who feels spiritually and physically enmeshed with her Gullah land and heritage, and urges her relatives to temper their expectations when they travel north for pastures new in the embryonic days of the Great Migration. When you leave this island, Nana warns her great-grandson Eli, a different image's Adisa Anderson, you ain't going to no land of milk and honey. Daughters of the Dust is a thematically rich, genuinely mesmerizing cinematic experience. Despite the large cast, Dash clearly and expertly draws the connections between the Pesant family members, with a particular focus on complex female relationships, and the whole film seems to flutter along in one rhapsodic moment, like a pleasurably extended exhalation of breath. Gorgeously composed images flow into one another, while an atmospheric score intermingles with a poetic, polyvocal, and multi-generational voiceover to immerse the viewer in a dreamlike headspace. The film's artistic majesty is no surprise when one considers the constellation of talent involved in its creation. Cinematographer Arthur Jafa and production designer Kerry James Marshall both went on to become internationally renowned visual artists.
Thank you. Again, you're listening to you read it and rereading it. You're having to do a lot of work in these shorts. They're not even, whether they're essays or I don't know how you were thinking of them, right? But you are having to like spin multiple plates at the same time. So I want to ask you about that a little bit later in terms of the writing process. But you know, you're having to be like, oh, remember this person who was in this film I just told you about 3 pages ago? And also, here's some stuff about like the filmmakers. But also, I want to talk about the whole film seems to flutter along in one rhapsodic moment. Like you're trying to grasp what the film is doing through language. Like, how are you spinning all those plates?
With tremendous difficulty, I have to say. I was keen to revisit this one because I literally remember where I was when I wrote this. I was in the cafe up the street, and it was one of maybe 3 or 4 times when I felt touched by the hand of the god of writing, and it just kind of it flowed out of me, as opposed to the kind of more mathematical structural process of a lot of these entries where, as you say, I'm juggling so many things: text, context, history, connecting it to the rest of the book. And what I really came to find, and this is an interesting, I think, reflection when it comes to reading film, I found to my dismay around 3 or 4 entries into the book that I was going to have to watch all of these films again. And as someone who has a very demanding full-time job and family, I was like, this is already going to be hard enough to do. But I realized that when I was trying to write about these films from memory without engaging with the text again first to refresh myself, the writing was very stale. And it was taking much, much longer than my calculations had allowed for. I thought, okay, I've seen this film. I can do this. This will be quick. And I'm sitting there hour 3, like blood out of a stone. So I remember going up to the cafe and being like, okay, it's Saturday. It's Daughters of the Dust Day. And I sat and ordered my tea and pressed play. And I was pretty much in tears for the whole thing. And I think it might have been like the stress of the situation of knowing that I still had 40 entries to write before my deadline, whatever it was. But I think that just so clearly you can feel that in the choice of the words that I'm using to describe the film. I'm really trying, as you said, to evoke a spirit, to evoke the sort of what watching the film is like through my language. And that idea of being carried along with it has always been my experience of Daughters of the Dust. And it's doing something chemical in terms of the film.
Yeah.
But again, it's that interplay of so many different aspects. The text, but also the context of the film, of knowing the sense that this was at the late age of 1992, the first film to have a national release, to be directed by a black woman in America at that absurdly late date. Yep. To know at the same time, not that Julie Dash has not gone on to have a brilliant career, as a professor and making lots of short films, but that this is her only theatrically released feature film. There's an undertow of what we might have had. I don't even want to project onto Julie Dash. Maybe she didn't want to make 10, 15 films. It's a personal thing. I want 10, 15 films from Judi Dench.
Yeah.
So there are all these things swirling, and there's a yearning in the film as well, and it just feels like it's such a unique piece of work at that scale, at that level of craft. That's the other thing. You're watching this film. I mentioned AJ and Kerry James Marshall in there as these contributors who have gone on to do amazing things, and I just felt that I owed it to the reader to try to at least give some sort of a sense of the experience of watching this film.
Yeah, like you are doing long sentences here, right? Like you are, I think you are pushing beyond your, I need to write a snappy sentence that describes it clearly, but like here this dynamic is embodied by the family matriarch, Nana, who feels spiritually and physically enmeshed with Golan. And, you kind of push on in the way that the film does, right? The film,
right.
That physically enmeshedness, like how do you describe physically enmeshedness in language, right? And temper their expectation when they travel north for pastures new in the embryonic days of the Great Migration. Like, you didn't have to go there, right? You could just... But trying to extend the sentence so that we feel how the film is really interested in temporality, right? It's saying, like, past, present, future. It's all there at the same time. And if you're confused, shut up. It's not even like I don't care. It's just like that's not the point of this, right?
That should have been the final sentence. If you're confused, shut up.
Just shut up. Just watch and like listen.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you've got like the quote from Nana, right? And maybe this is like a stylistic like film criticism thing, but like when you leave this island, Nana warns her great grandson Eli, you ain't got no land of milk and honey, right? Like you could easily write that in different ways.
Yeah.
Nana warns her grandson when you leave this island, but there's that pause, right? When you leave this island. Pause. Yeah. Let me give you some information. And actually the bit after is like, whoa, it's the kind of dig, right? You ain't going to land of milk and honey, which is one of the things of the film, right? It's like, this isn't a paradise and that's not going to be a paradise either. Just to
one of the key themes for sure. And I think it's really interesting. That's why I'm really enjoying this, because I don't think it was a conscious choice, but the way I've broken it up, it does not only the temporal break, but it also does give a sense of suspense. Because you don't know, the hammer blow is it delays the hammer blow, but it's coming and it's connected, and it closes up the paragraph because it opens with the more kind of explicit calling back to other films which are about that.
Yep.
My choice of saying it reflects on the struggle between tradition and modernity. I'm wondering if I'd done it again, I would say the struggle, because that's quite grand language.
Yeah.
Instead of a society struggle.
Yeah.
But this is close reading for you and puzzling over what choices I might have made. But that isn't that to me, even that the use of the definite article there, because it sort of presumes that there is an existing struggle between tradition and modernity that is raging all the time, which is actually that's a bit too broad.
Yeah. Or as though that there is one version of tradition versus modernity, because tradition versus modernity for the Gullah people in like the Carolina Islands like is a very different tradition versus modernity for like the Harlem Renaissance or something, right?
For sure.
I did the American version of that for everyone listening. Hope you appreciated that rather than Renee.
He'll record an English one.
Yeah. I do it for my students all the time. They're like, "What word are you saying?" I'm like, "Renee." They're like, "Oh."
Well, I've been here now. I've obviously born in London, and I've been in America since 2014. And for me, it's like a lot of the words that I'm using, I don't even know, like saying premiere instead of premiere, which I just French. But I'll write you instead of I'll write to you. All sorts of things that I don't notice I'm doing. So thank you for flagging.
It always entertains me. You then say Daughters of the Dust is a thematically rich, genuinely mesmerizing cinematic experience. And then again, you've got this really long sentence, despite the large cast. You put expertly draws the connections between the Pesant family members with a particular focus on complex female relationships. Like I'm interested in that why that in brackets, I guess.
Well, it was either brackets or M dash, and just that day the parenthetical came calling for reasons that will forever remain inscrutable. I think I just wanted to hammer home the point that this was a film that is very female forward in its conception and execution and focus. There are dudes, hanging around on the outskirts. Yeah. And they play very interesting roles. They're not completely on the margins of the film, but it's such a female focused story. And those relationships, I think, are what Judy Dash is interested in, and what it's helped it resonate with not just female viewers, but viewers over the years. Because you don't see that level of care and detail around the relationships between Black women on film very often at all.
Right.
So I think that bringing that out was just another way to emphasize what I think is a really important facet of the film.
Yeah, for sure. And then you talk about how the film seems to flutter along in one rhapsodic moment, like a pleasure extended exhalation of breath. You've got like all this F sound, right? Like family, focus, female, film, flutter. But then the breath, like the TH on breath, kind of picks up some of that kind of like soft F-ness. And it does feel like that gorgeously composed images flow into another more Fs. Then you do poetic, polyvocal, a multi-generational voiceover to Most of You Are in a Dream. Like, you're extending this out so much in a really enjoyable way.
Thank you. Yeah, you can. There's that meme of the guy like playing the piano, like, and it goes on fire. Like, that was kind of how I was feeling. You could tell, that there's not a great deal of language like this in the book, and I just think reading this is just evidence of how inspired I was.
Yeah,
having just watched this film, and yeah, the alliteration and the plosives, it's all there, and it is fun to read over it. And you mentioned seems. I said the whole film seems to flutter along in one rhapsodic moment, which maybe is a subconscious desire on my part to temper some of the hyperbole, because I'm not asserting that it flutters along. It seems to flutter.
Yeah.
But it, so there maybe that is some of my kind of built-in resistance against getting too carried away.
Yeah.
In the writing, and I hadn't really thought about that either. But it is interesting that I chose there to say it seems rather than it does. It just happens. Yeah,
which is funny, right? Because you're clearly making other value judgments, right? Mesmerizing, gorgeously, majesty. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not as if you're not being like, this is really bloody good, so just go watch it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, funny those moments where, again, whether this is like criticism or kind of like survey or overview, that are we allowed to have poetic language in these kinds of things, right? Is almost like one of the questions. Like, is that what this is for? And here you're like, yeah, actually, like poetic.
I think it totally fits. It fits the film. And that was one of my, many rules and regulations for myself as I embarked on this project. I wanted to have language in each case that fit the film. So if I thought of a really, really funny quip, it wasn't going to like work in a chapter about apartheid. I had to restrain myself. So the form of the style of the writing had to sort of match the film.
Yeah.
And then another rule here, which I didn't mention earlier, was one thing I did to make it harder for myself, but hopefully better for the writer, was to separate out the synopsis. So the synopsis lives on the left-hand side of the page. We kind of agreed that with the designer early on. So there's a short synopsis. So sometimes in the main text, it will refer to something that has been made clear in the synopsis.
Sure.
And that sort of, the intention of that was to stop me from resting on synopsis to pack the word count.
Yeah.
And then this happens, there's my word, will that do, kind of thing. And it was really just a way to free up what is not a great amount of real estate. 450 words, I think, was the maximum that I had to do this, which is a tough chunk of words, because it's too long for just the short capsule hit, but it's not long enough. You can't do the throat clearing in that. When you have 1,000 words, you can kind of get away with 300 words of throat clearing before getting into it. And in this case, it was like, no, I have to be, every word has to count.
Yeah, that's like a ridiculously small number of words to even get to like, the breadth of the thing that you're trying to talk about. And that writing for a small space is like, what is the most important thing I need to tell you, right? And I think even if you take out the, the kind of superlatives, even just the alliteration, right? You even do it in when one considers the constellation involved in its creation, cinematography, like, you know what I mean? Like, even when you're not doing it for a kind of poetic purpose, like the sound play is there to kind of move us along through it, right? To kind of help us almost, to kind of just move through the sentence. And when you've got that short word count, it's hard to, what are the key punches I need to give, right? What are the key things I need to hit on?
Completely, to make it enjoyable to read as well. And I think, when we talked earlier about mentioning the two films earlier in the book, my dream is that someone picks this up and just sits down and reads it cover to cover.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not going to happen, but I did want to plot a course through the book, so it wasn't done in a more formal, here's a cross-reference index at the back, but like a sense of a story unfolding. The chronological aspect of the book was very important.
Yeah.
And because you can seed ideas and you can pick up with characters early on, and then they can come back and appear in films or making films later in the book. And in this case, it's just this thematic through line. So that was really important for me as well, to be able to reference other films in a way that felt organic and that would make sense to somebody who had decided to read it all the way through.
I wish I say I did, but I did. I haven't yet finished, but I'm jumping around like it's very much like, oh, I know that movie, or like, oh, I always wanted to watch that movie, or like, I wonder what Ashley is gonna say about Tyler Perry. And
and were you surprised with what I said?
I feel like you were very nice in a way. I thought you were gonna go for the jugular, but you were quite tempered, I thought.
Magnanimous.
Yeah. Not often a word I use to describe you, but like...
No. It was I showed my lesser spotted magnanimous stripe for this. It was a hard one to write, actually. I know we're talking about Daughters of the Dust, but I don't know if you've ever actually watched a Tyler Perry film.
I have.
But they truly operate on in their own universe, and I think that was what perhaps influenced me to be more magnanimous than I might have done, because he truly is doing his own thing. It's a very singular style of filmmaking, and this one in particular, it just doesn't operate by the standard rules. Even down to the title was really making me laugh, because it's called Medea Goes to Jail, and I chose this one because it's the biggest box office success. I'd never watched it before, and I'm looking at my watch, and 75 minutes in, she still hasn't gone to jail yet. And that for me is an emblematic of, he doesn't play by the rules.
No.
But you can't ignore him. If you're trying to do a somewhat, I would never call this fully comprehensive, because it would be hubristic in the extreme to suggest that I could do that in this format. But in a broad-based appreciation of black cinema that has been important and influential in the last 100 or so years.
Yeah,
no small task. Tyler Perry plays a huge role in that, and his contribution echoes throughout history from other black artists and entertainers who've been deemed disreputable and, potentially harming the cause of the race. There was his infamous beef with Spike Lee.
Yep.
But then you look, and I mentioned it earlier, but you look back at how Shaft was received by the NAACP, how Amos and Andy was received, and even though that was very popular with black audiences. So again, it's one of those aspects in this book where there is a lineage that you can chart throughout. And I was trying to be attuned to that with the language I was using to describe things, which is why magnanimity was there with Mr. Perry.
Yeah, you're a better man than me. No, I think I taught Diary of a Mad Black Woman once on like an adult education film course, and everyone was like furious with me for like making them watch it. And I was like, he's like one of the richest black filmmakers like working. So if we need to talk about like black cinema in the US, which I think is what the course was, like, you're gonna have to watch at least one of them. And they were just like, no, this isn't good. I'm like, what do you think we're here for?
You have to reckon with him. You have to reckon with stuff that you don't you might not love. I think that's a really important. It sounds simple, but it's such an important part of all this as well.
Yeah, but it'd be like talking about other cinema, right? Like talking about contemporary cinema generally, and not even looking at the fact that Marvel make movies. Do you know what I mean? Like, it would be just ignoring the money-making machine in favor of like, but we need art. I'm like, okay, but this is what people go to see quite a lot of the time.
It's true, but also crucially, like wrestling with the text as well, because again, with that dreaded D word, the discourse and the meta text is so omnipresent that, the temptation can be to stray from the hard work, which is wrestling with what is on screen.
Yeah. Okay, listen, we're going to try a thing. This may be terrible, but Ashley and I are just going to watch the first like minute or so of the movie. I can't play it for you for copyright reasons, but I'm sure you can go find Daughters of the Dust. Go buy the actual special edition Blu-ray or DVD because it's beautiful. Just go buy it. But I just want to talk about the very opening because we've discussed your kind of treatment of the film, but for people who haven't watched it, I think the visual language and style of the movie is like quite singular, and it'd be worth just like talking through some of the things that you see, some of the things that I see. Just for a couple of minutes before we move to your kind of writing. So we're going to press play at the same time and hope that it makes sense. So we've had this title card, right? And then we go straight onto these hands with like the dust like coming out of them, and it's this slow-mo shot, I think, right? It's like it's very slow, and immediately you get the crossfade to this guy washing in the water. Another crossfade to like a bedroom with these like billowing white curtains, and we see like a person. Another crossfade. Let's just pause there because I can see the water and the boat in the distance, right?
Yes.
Like just think about like the crossfade, right? Like the film opening on just images bleeding into one another.
Yeah. And that sets the tone, doesn't it, for the entire film? And it kind of gives you a nod to those questions of intergenerational mingling and conversation, and how the voiceovers are divided between like the unborn child like delivering a voiceover and Nana as well. So there's this whole swing of generation that is delivering the voiceover in the film.
Yep.
And that is just a really good example of editing choices. They're not hard edits. You know,
Nope.
You're not having to reset every time. You're being encouraged from the very first minute to settle into this rhythm and to understand that things are interconnected, and that's just the film's form announcing that, not in an especially ostentatious way.
Nope.
It's just happening, and you're seeing that also with the colors of the film as well, and you're being asked as a viewer to look closer and connect the dots yourself. Who is this person? I don't know yet, but you come to trust the storytelling and that steady hand as it proceeds.
Yeah, it's a voice we're like, we don't know who this is yet. It is not a film that's saying you've got a voiceover, but you clearly know who it is, right? Because I'm going to show you a photo, like a shot of them getting up out of bed or whatever, right?
Text under the screen.
yeah, literally. And also, you know, the first bodies that we see hands, but we don't see the person's face, right? It's kind of cut off. We then see like a silhouette of a person in the water, like we don't see who they are. Then we get a person lying in a bed, but we don't really see who they are. Like it's refusing at at various levels. Like you don't need to know who they are right now. Make sense of these like bodies in space almost, right?
And this is also, I think, something that, the film took, it was so long for it to get funded. Like Hollywood didn't have anything to do with it. My understanding is that PBS ended up, or American Playhouse, ponied up the cash to get it made.
Oh, wow.
The first idea for it was in 1975. So that's 16, 17 years from conception to execution.
Wow.
And when it comes to commissioners or people being interested in this work, it's a very white dominated, very male dominated industry. And Julie Dash is presenting us with images that are not necessarily immediately legible to that demographic.
Yeah.
So it's quite easy to turn away from, well, what is this? I don't know. It's too slow.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know what I'm looking at here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what I love, and it becomes it's more moving as time progresses, just how much she sticks to her guns with this film.
Yeah.
And how consistent the aesthetic and the style is. How clear the vision is as well. For a debut film, obviously that's slightly misleading because she'd been making short films for a long time. If listeners can find her 1982 film Illusions, it's just absolutely beautiful. She made that at UCLA as part of what retroactively became known as the LA Rebellion School of Filmmaking, alongside the likes of Charles Burnett and Haile Gerima. So she's been making films for a long time. This wasn't a total newbie, but still, it's a debut feature. And the steadiness and the surety of the style and the vision, I find very moving and kind of exhilarating.
Yeah, for sure. There were the title cards just before the bit that we started watching, and it kind of describes like the Gala people of the Sea Islands. And you're like, this is a film that's like, it's easing you in, but it's not giving you things yet. And I love that tension, right? It's like, this is a soft movie in a way, right? It's not irreversible. Do you know what I mean? It's not challenging you visually in that way, but it is challenging you in a slightly different way.
It's asking you to engage with it.
Yeah.
It's asking you to do some work, which is too much.
Yeah, it's too much. We love you, Julie. All right, let's play again.
Okay, let's go.
And we've got this boat in the distance. Another crossfade. And now we've got some people on this boat. Tell me what you see.
Well, there's a person at the front rowing the boat, and there's another crossfade into the kind of neck and chest region of one of the characters who's dressed all in white, and her face is covered. Yep. And then we fade into Daughters of the Dust, the title card of the film.
Yeah. And then we get this shot. I'm pausing it just because it's beautiful. You've got this
Well,
aerial shot.
today it would be a drone shot. This is a
Yeah.
full-on helicopter shot
Yeah.
of the landscape, St. Simon's Island, Ebo Landing, the Sea Islands of the South, 1902.
Yeah.
So we do get a clear sense of time and place imposed on the screen in text. But then we see oh man, so you don't want to hear me say it, talking over it, but it is so beautiful. Just a man looking out at sunset at this on the river's edge.
Yeah.
And reeds and the sky and such reverence for the language. And
right. He's like praying, right?
Yeah.
Also here.
A Muslim prayer.
Yeah.
Islamic call. So
and
again, that also is sort of disrupting in a way, like what you may think from this film.
Yeah.
That some of the first sounds you hear are the Islamic prayer.
Yeah. That was something I'd forgotten, actually.
Yeah.
In thinking about it. And again, like the shots of like the reeds, the hands, the book, like a marvel that she is not giving us like someone's face for ages.
Yeah.
Right? Like only here at this bit we start to see two people on the shore. And again,
we're 5 minutes into the film now.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. There's something about that refusal of like immediate identification, right? That
this is the first kind of out and out close up here. Of
exactly.
One of the waiting women, welcoming this group that has come on the boat.
Yeah, like wearing these incredible clothes, right? That I don't know enough about clothing, but like this kind of, it feels like Edwardian or something, or even Victorian in various ways, clothing in this swampland of the Carolinas. Like people, I think viewers are going to be asking questions of like, who are these people? How are they dressed in this way? Where are they going? What am I seeing? Who are they? There's so much refusal. And I think that's to do with the water as well, right? Like this film is just saturated with water. She kind of gives into that aesthetically too, right? Just movement. And not always like, not the sea as like this torrential, rolling thing, but rather the swamp or the kind of the bayou as stillness as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is really beautiful. It's like a really particular choice.
Very much so. And something I think about, I read a pretty depressing article a couple of years ago about, I think it was mainly about Netflix movies and about how commissioners are sort of insisting now on exposition and speed at the start of a film. And it is increasingly rare to have to watch a film that takes its time.
Yeah.
That really takes its time. And you were speaking there about obscured faces, even as points of identification. It takes a good few minutes here before you even see someone's whole face, which is, again, a remarkable statement of intent. And it's just, again, just watching it, I feel like I suddenly felt the pressure on there as I was watching this, close reading a film in real time as opposed to a book. Because I'm just like slack-jawed looking at some of these vistas and some of the cinematography.
Yeah.
And kind of falling behind. I was like pausing it because I wanted to take in the image. But it's just it really is an immersive film. And I'm thinking now, like, it's not a surprise that my language was quite so, let's not say hyperbolic, but enthusiastic.
Yeah.
In response to this.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how how do you not be enthusiastic about this movie, right? Something is happening, right, as you watch this. You know that you're watching something that's not usual, right? That hasn't been the norm at that point. But you don't entirely know why, right? It's just like you're seeing lots of those fades were actually quicker than I remembered also, right? Like she does throw in quite a few images, right? In those, they're not long, slow, she's not doing a Michael Haneke not moving for like 5 minutes, right? There's quite a few of those crosscuts. And that was quite interesting to me that actually, like it's like image, iconography, image, landscape, and you feel saturated by this stuff.
Yeah.
In a way that is both pleasurable and also a bit like, what's happening?
Yeah, overwhelming in a way, and emotionally so. And that's just what I love about it. It's the form of the film is so consonant with the landscape, with the water and the nature imagery. It just feels organic, and I really don't want to speak in cliches, right? I mean, it's sort of these big statements about organic filmmaking, but it does feel so unified, the form and the content, in a way that is so special. And I think it's why it's become so influential. It's everybody knows Lemonade by Beyonce, which is such a descendant of this film. And I think we see it pops up in so much other media. And I think it's the clarity and the unity of that vision has made it something that is relatively, you can adopt, you can appropriate from this vision. I don't necessarily mean appropriation in a completely derogatory sense. There's a rich history of appropriative art, which is actually quite generative.
Yeah.
But I think in this case, you can really see where they're drawing from, which is a testament to the strength of Julie's vision.
Yeah. Even if you Google it, listeners, go Google it if you haven't seen it. And like, if you just type it in, you look in just the images part, whatever search engine, sorry, I shouldn't say Google, down with Google, but like whatever search engine you use, the images, like there are so many striking shots of like the family on the beach, right? All wearing these incredible white dresses, right? And the sand is white and you just see sky. Or then there's a group of men in their like beautiful suits and their hats and they're taking like photos on the beach. Like there are so many like iconic images of the film, even though it's not a film heavy on plot particularly, right? There's not tons of stuff that happens, but it is so a film invested in the image, both still and move it. There's just so much happening here that we could spend hours just talking about the first 5 minutes.
Go watch the film. It is. Yeah. It's a one-off.
Yeah, just go get the movie. Okay, you talked a little bit earlier about your writing in cafes. Okay, so A, is that always the way? Do you have like a standardized setup for writing, different kinds of writing?
Oh, I try where possible. Yeah, I try to write in my home office, but I think the one consistent feature of my writing is a sort of built-in meltdown for the first few days that I kind of generally just have to get out of the way. For me, writing, it hasn't got better as I've got older. It's got worse. It seems to be the practice that is uniquely attuned to my insecurities. It opens up a crack in my mind into which all my insecurities can leap out and consume me. Yeah. Because when it's just you and the page or the screen, let's not be quaint with our descriptions. Am I a fraud? Do I know what I'm talking about? This isn't good enough. It's all of that. And that all kind of comes rushing up. And this is a consistent thing for me. And then invariably, I'll somehow get to the end of the piece through hell or high water. And a couple of months later, I'll look back on it and go, that's all right, isn't it?
Let's do that again.
Let's do that again. When all the toxicity has finally left my body, I can go, oh, actually, I'll take that commission. So I think ultimately it's a product of many different circumstances and influences in my life. I went through a long period of writing film criticism and coming to be perhaps taken for granted as the guy that would write about black film. And I remember there was a moment when I was commissioned on the same day to write about 12 Years a Slave, A Haunted House 2, starring one of the Wayans brothers, and write a pre-obituary for Sidney Poitier.
Oh my God.
Because obviously, this was long before he died. Yeah. But, it's one of those quirks. Oh, that's why the obituary dropped as soon as this person died, because someone wrote it 5 years ago. Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, hang on a minute, this isn't right.
No.
And feeling sort of that pressure to be the guy who wrote about black film and trying to reconcile the complexities of being someone who's genuinely interested in all of that and wanted to write about it and contribute to the discourse, and also understand that there was other people weren't necessarily writing about it. So there was a sense of a calling that this is something that I should be doing, but also that I also wanted to write about other things as well. So there's that sort of pressurized element. There's the economic aspect of it too. How much am I getting paid for this?
Yep.
What is the reading environment? Yeah. When it goes out into the world, am I going to be subject to, banter from the Twitter sphere? So all of those things, I think, and who am I writing for? What is my audience? When you're a freelancer, you're jumping around. So all of these things can kind of commingle to make it quite difficult to know where you stand as a writer. So there are these kind of magical moments when I find a commission, like writing the Criterion essay for the Small Axe films, the Steve McQueen series. I had like 3,000 words to really dig into those films, and that was a beautiful experience. But I think I've always enjoyed writing, or I used to enjoy it before it became a profession. And I think it came from a desire of me wanting to express myself. And I spoke about that earlier, but wanting to share the things that I was passionate about. I actually found something. Can I read you something?
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, I was going through, like my mum was moving house and we were going through boxes and we found a report card from my, I think it was AS level theatre studies. So I would have been about 16 or 17. And my teacher, Mr. Grant, wrote, and I'll read it to you. Ashley can produce very successful theatre studies writing, as his early piece on the Red Shoes shows, and this was a knee-high theatre production of the Red Shoes. I believe that his subsequent assignments haven't been quite as successful because, paradoxically, he finds writing pleasurable and actually part of his persona. What he needs to do is listen very carefully to the subtly different types of writing we study in the exemplar material so that his own writing exactly suits the task in hand, rather than becoming an opportunity to listen to his own voice in a less than critical way.
Wow.
So I was very much read
for filth
by Mr. Grant. Thank you. And that for me, it really stuck with me. It clearly influenced me. It was such a stinging piece of criticism, you know, in a way delivered with tenderness, I think. That what is writing for? Is it about listening to yourself, bloviating because you enjoy it? Or how can, or is there a way you can apply your enthusiasm in ways that are productive and generative? And I really was enjoying it then. That was at the time that I was reading all of those music magazines. I was getting into the idea of critical writing, getting my opinion out there on things. There's an element of ego to that, right? Listen to what I think. And asking yourself, why do I want people to know what I think? And why do I like what I like? These are like fundamental questions, which I'm always searching for the answers for. But it started early for me. It started, when I was 15, 16, that would have been 17 when I got that. The judgment came down from Mr. Grant. And I started writing, reading film criticism. So I had all the film guides. I had like the big kind of doorstop Time Out film guide. Virgin film guide. Leslie Halliwell's incredibly miserable, like one-line movie reviews. And all of that was so interesting to me. And I think that was what started on my journey of wanting to actually be a writer. And I've just done so many things influenced by my economic realities of what I could afford to write, what commissions I could afford to take on. And there was a stretch for many years when I was writing a lot. I was writing for any publication that would have me. And it was reviews, features, interviews, the lot. And I was doing my own blog. I was just writing constantly and figuring out what my voice was and what I wanted it to be. And I still think to this day that I'm just, improving as a writer and honestly understanding that those ideas, clarity and precision, are just so important for me. I don't want to be misunderstood. So what can I do within my power to achieve not being misunderstood? In a world where there's such a war against context, it's increasingly difficult. But I think there's power in precision. There's power in precision of language. And those are things I'm always thinking about as I'm writing.
This is reminding me of Andrea Long Chiu, critic par excellence. She's got her kind of collected essays in a book called Authority. Listeners, go read that. That's my recommendation today. There's a really good essay in there about the role of the critic over time, which is fantastic. But the introduction is about what do we want from the critic today? And like all the things you've been saying today about like the material realities, like her point is like pay critics more and pay them so that they can do the thing that you think you want them to do, which is to give you a kind of thought out value judgment on the thing, right? She talks about how, she's in this privileged position where Vulture will pay her like a salary. And if she's reviewing a movie or a book, she's going to read that person's back catalogue, right? So she's reading a new novel by this person. She's going to read every other book by that person to contextualize and understand what this new book is doing, or the movie or whatever it is. She's like, nobody gets to do that, right? As a critic, like that's so rare. Like it's near impossible. So it's a really, really interesting essay that I think taps into some of the things you're talking about here.
I think it's all connected. And for me, criticism should be revelatory and it should be rooted in the kind of love and respect for the art form. So there was a time in my life where the kind of gotcha criticism or the pan, and we speak of Andrea Long Chiu, a pan par excellence. Reading her pans are great. They're fun. But over time, I came to kind of take less pleasure in writing those. I think when I started to understand, I actually don't know how to put this, but I think I just maybe, I don't want to say I matured because I don't think that's right either. but I just found more value in trying to articulate an issue in the context of care as opposed to this is a piece of shit. For me, like I wrote about the FIFA movie United Passions, where Tim Roth plays Sepp Blatter, and I wrote such a vicious pan for it that I got invited to radio shows to talk about it. And that film is a kind of morally bankrupt piece of shit, so I have no problem with that. But when you're like panning a piece of work that someone has spent, a low budget filmmaker has spent 5-6 years of their life trying to put together, what are you really doing?
Yeah.
And in some ways, that's why I stepped back from it, because I also wanted to make sure I was being honest. And if I can't bring my full critical self to the table, I shouldn't be doing it. So that's about me and the choices of which commissions to take on.
Yeah.
But I give you an example, a critic, Toby Hazlitt, who I think is brilliant, who wrote a great pan of the Thomas Chatterton Williams memoir, which I recommend everyone run out and read. He raised a really brilliant criticism about the Raoul Peck film, I Am Not Your Negro. And he made the point that he was troubled by the filmmaker's use of Samuel L. Jackson to do the voiceover of Baldwin. And it's Samuel L. And I really loved the film. But then that made me see it in a completely different way, because it was a sort of, intentional or not, it did remove a core part of Baldwin's identity, which is his queerness and his grace. Yeah, and you have Samuel L. Jackson doing it in full on kind of badass mode.
Yes.
And I thought, oh my God, for me, like that's one occasion. This is like 10 years ago, but I just remember thinking, oh, that's great criticism. It's something that is really textually specific. It's something I hadn't thought of. Yeah, and it deepens my appreciation for the choices made in the film. It doesn't mean that the film's bad, right? But it's a close reading of it. Yeah,
that's what we need.
In a really thoughtful way.
Yeah. Just very quickly, so the writing is chaos. It gets worse. When just taking away what you said, you have to write 100 of these entries. Like, did you say like I'm going to do one every 3 days? Is it 2 a week? Is it like, how did you even think about that mountain?
I was essentially trying to get 3 or 4 a week done, like when it really kicked in towards the end. And I found some sort of rhythm towards the end out of pure necessity. Yeah. And there were these occasional magical moments, like with Daughters of the Dust, when I was able to find some poetry in there. I was really trying to make the writing accessible. The person I had in mind for the book was myself at 16 or 17. So it's no good if it's written in a style that's alienating. Yeah. But it also can't be pandering, but it needed to be specific as well. I wanted to make sure that in each capsule, there was something that was a piece of criticism or reference to something specific to the medium of film. Yeah. So there's some formal analysis in there. And it was just a case of being extremely disciplined, trying to write 3 or 4 a week. And it took a couple of years all told. But, I procrastinated for quite a while to begin with. And then when the realities of it hit, I ended up writing, I think, about 40 odd in 5 months or something like that. Yeah. So, when the pressure was on, I sort of kicked in. But it's, I don't mean to be too histrionic or overdramatic about writing getting worse. What I mean is it just hasn't got any easier. It hasn't. It's not like I've reached maestro stage. I've been doing it for 20 years or whatever, where it just flows. That's just not the case. There are too many psychological, economic, and professional factors that flow into my own experience of writing and why I do it and when I do it. Yeah, that it allows for very little consistency. Yeah,
good. I think it's nice for people to hear, right? Like, you are the Criterion man, right? Like, that's you in my head. I'm like, if the Criterion man struggles to write these like beautiful essays, then we can all struggle and it's fine.
I believe in being honest about this, and I believe in not pretending that writing is easy. It shouldn't be easy. We live in a society where forces are conspiring on an extraordinarily aggressive level to get us to stop thinking for ourselves. Yeah. To punch things into language learning models, to not bother doing research, to not try. And ultimately writing is hard. It's hard to dive into your own mind. It's hard to articulate yourself in a clear way. It's hard to come up with a consistent position on a text, which itself might be ever shifting. Yeah. I'm sure you have been in a position, I certainly have, where I've sat down to review a piece of work, and just as I'm approaching my deadline, I don't agree with myself anymore. What now?
Yeah.
Writing shouldn't be easy, and I
Yeah.
think you should probably only be doing it if something in you is telling you have to do it.
Yeah.
But I think that it's at its best, it's really rewarding because you kind of can come to understand yourself a little more clearly after the fact as well,
Yeah.
and understand why you are. Again, I'm saying it again, but it's a fundamental question. Why do I like what I like? That is a hard question, because sometimes you respond to things and you have no idea why. Sometimes it's a question that people don't want to ask themselves for very good reasons, because it might reveal something about yourself that you're not overly comfortable with. So when I say writing doesn't get easier, I don't mean that it's downhill all the way, downhill spiral to death. But it really is something that is tricky, and I think it should be. And I don't have a problem with that, except when I actually open the laptop and start to write. And then I do have a big problem with it.
Yeah. Disagree myself. I don't even know what I think most of the time. So yeah, like I'm like, it's one thing saying like, I really like this thing. Hey, you other person who I've never met before, like I think you might like it. And these are the reasons why I think it's good.
Yeah.
Or the reverse, right? Why don't I like it? Well, I just don't.
Why not? Because it's shit.
Yeah, just because it is.
That's one of those intimate things you can do, isn't it? Like when you show someone, like a friend or partner or whatever, I really like this. And then you're sitting watching it, and you get this horrible sense 5 minutes in that maybe they're not. So there is something very vulnerable about sharing
100%.
why you like what you like.
100%. Even in like class, when I give students books, like I'm like, well, I'm teaching you this for a reason, right? There's like a clear reason why we need to read this book. But also, like, I really care about it. And if you hate it, I don't know what I'm going to do about that. It's not often that they're like, I really, really hate this, Chris. But like sometimes they're just like, it's fine. I'm like, fine.
Yeah.
This is Nella Larson's passing. Like, I feel like you should just leave. Like, I don't know what do you want me to do?
Just get out. Oh, actually, funny enough, should I say this? Yeah. Well, let's say a certain teacher at school showed us what the exams were done. This was when we'd have been about 15, 16. They put on the film of Glengarry Glen Ross because David Mamet, love him or hate him, has a very particular style of language.
Indeed.
He's one of those. You can listen to 3 lines over David Mamet. It's him. There were a couple of classmates who were sort of giggling and not really paying attention, and he screamed at him. He said, "Get out!" And we were all kind of shocked into silence. But I remember like that, seeing that passion. Not that I would advocate for excommunicating a couple of students after the exams are done because they weren't fully paying attention. But he was so invested in wanting us to pay attention to the language.
Yeah.
That his passion just kind of overflowed there. Yeah. And there is, again, it's that vulnerable. He was probably feeling that. He was like, I want these kids to understand how this language is operating, and these are not. These kids are not, so they can leave.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question. See, I always say, like, what books might you recommend? But I'm going to allow you to break this a little bit. If you want to recommend books and films, you can. But it's up to you, wherever you want to go.
No, this is books up close. I'm going to recommend a novel called A Shock by an Irish author called Keith Ridgway, who's based in London. And a friend of mine recommended this to me a couple of years ago, and it really got under my skin and stuck with me. It's a very fragmented and queer and funny and very disturbing portrait of disparate individuals in London. And it kind of deals with the last collapse of the reverberations of the last collapse of the Labour left in a way that's not explicitly political, but it kind of colours the way the characters interact. And it just struck me as very unique and thoughtful and funny, and I loved it. So A Shock by Keith Ridgway. I think Amy Sall's book, The African Gaze, which is a kind of textbook about African film and photography, which came out also a couple of years ago, dare I say, is a nice kind of complement with my book. Mm-hmm. They take a similar-ish approach. Hers is kind of slightly more academic in tone, I think, than mine, and has other great contributors in it. So it's slightly more of a polyvocal piece. But it's just so beautifully designed and made with such love. And she spent so much time with all of the filmmakers, the still living ones. So I think Amy Sall's book is great. And I just read London Falling by Patrick Radden Keefe and kind of tore through it in a couple of days. I thought it was just exemplary storytelling, and it reflected London back to me in a way that I knew kind of existed, but it gets into those crevices and corners in a way that's very illuminating. And again, just the control, the control of the language and the pacing, and when details are introduced.
Yeah.
So many times I was like, oh, that's why you mentioned that 5 pages ago. You got me again, you know.
Yeah.
I thought it was terrific. So those are the 3 that popped to mind.
Those are very different, very, great suggestions. What he does is a particular skill, right? And like, it is the same as fiction, right? You're like, if I'm having this thing here, I need this thing here. I need to make this formal choice about, I've heard some complaints about like, oh, the chapter then goes off to this other place and I want to stay with this story. And it's like, this is called form, people, right? Like there's a structure for a reason, just like stay with it, right? Like I don't know, this is me gonna go off on one, but I'm gonna stop myself. But like, there's like a distrust, right, of like the author, the person who made the thing. Sometimes I feel like this is the same as, we hate experts now, right, in contemporary life, like down with expertise. And sometimes like, just let the author or the filmmaker or the artist like take you, just suspend yourself for like a minute, please. And
maybe they know what they're doing.
Yeah. And if they don't, just like wait till the end to say that. But anyway,
can I just say one quick thing? Because you said I'm Mr. Criterion. I just want to shout out like the Criterion editorial team as well. I wrote my first piece for them in 2017. It was this film, Black Girl. I wrote the liner notes for the Blu-ray premiere of Black Girl by Usman Semben. Just the level of detail and just the kindness and the thoughtfulness that goes into the editing process. And I've written numerous things, even though I work there in a curatorial position. I occasionally write long form essays for them as well. And they're just the best in the business. And I feel very honored and grateful to get to work with them. And keeping the art of editing alive. It's amazing. It's beautiful. And there's nothing on the theme of close reading, nothing more moving than being edited well, read with care, and shaped to be the best version of yourself that you can on the page. I love that.
That's a great place to end. Ashley, this was a joy. Thank you so much for doing this.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or on YouTube, and share with people on socials. Follow the show and me on Instagram at BooksUpClose. Tag me in any posts of the episodes that you like. And if you can, please do fill out the feedback form that is linked in the show notes. I'll send you some Books Up Close merch if you do, and then send me a message. You can also get show transcripts and more information by subscribing to the Substack. This show is made possible by an Impact Accelerator Award from the University of Hertfordshire and the Arts and Humanities Research Council.